Well, some quick headlines for you this morning. Barbara Streisand standing by Hillary Clinton, telling Trump he's the one who's crooked. Well, that'll teach him. The singer published a blog post for something called the Huffington Post, which is a website, attacking Trump. Among her jabs, she calls him a guy who looks like a raccoon in a tanning bed with a flying squirrel on his head. Wow. Smoke rising from her keyboard. And Jill Stein did not get invited to the first presidential debate at Hofstra on Monday, but that's not going to stop her from showing up and trying to be heard. The Green Party candidate and her supporters plan on having a protest outside the debate. No word on whether they'll chain themselves to the doors or not. Stein failed to reach the 15% of support in national polls in order to qualify. There she is. And now to a Fox Alert for you. Chaos continues in the city of Charlotte for the fourth night in a row. Rioters demanding justice for a man shot by police.
And now there is brand new video of that shooting. Rick Leventhal is live from Charlotte with the latest details this morning. Rick, good morning. What is the latest where you are?
Well, hundreds of people took to the streets again last night, as you mentioned, but for the second straight night, there were peaceful demonstrations, unlike the first two nights when there was violence and looting. Last night went pretty smoothly, thanks in part to the National Guard troops who posted themselves in front of businesses and hotels and other key locations in the downtown area. Police did allow demonstrators to rally well past the midnight curfew, even let them march on a highway for an exit. But at about 2:25 this morning, when the crowd had dwindled to a manageable size, officers moved in to disperse and made at least 7 arrests, according to our overnight team on the ground. Many in the crowd were chanting for authorities to release the tape, they said, the dash cam footage and body cam footage showing an officer shooting Keith Lamont Scott on Tuesday afternoon, but most have now seen the video that Scott's wife recorded on her cell phone.
Keith, don't you do it. Don't you do it. Keith, don't you do it. Did you shoot him?
Scott's family released that tape after they were allowed to watch the police tapes. And then the family attorney released a statement saying, in part, while police did give him several commands, Scott did not aggressively approach them or raise his hands at law enforcement at any time. It is impossible to discern from the video what, if anything, Mr. Scott is holding in his hands. Police have said that they recovered a handgun at the scene, and sources, law enforcement sources, have told local media that the gun was loaded and had Scott's fingerprints and DNA and blood on it when it was recovered, guys.
Yeah. Rick Leventhal joining us live from Charlotte. Thanks a lot, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Well, we're just getting warmed up this Saturday morning. Rudy Giuliani, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, a key advisor of the Trump campaign, along with the great Chuck Woolery and Geraldo Rivera. They are all to come on this show.
Plus, Christmas, baby, 3 months away, but the toys your kid will be asking for are already on the shelves. We've got some of them in our studio this morning. Clayton is even playing with them already. No surprise there. Good morning to you. It is Saturday, September 24th. I'm Abby Hunston. We start with a Fox News alert. A massacre at the mall. 5 people are dead after a shooter opens fire in a gun-free zone.
We're receiving shots fired at Burlington.
I've got 2 victims down bleeding in the makeup section. Unknown number of victims. Reports of 3 to 4 down inside.
And this morning, police need your help finding this man. You can see him there, the latest on the manhunt in moments.
And just 2 days to go before the first presidential debate. What kind of advice is Rudy Giuliani giving Donald Trump, America's mayors? Here, and he's coming into the studio. Come on in, Mr. Mayor.
And we've had some confusion with the cameras. Come on, the question is, will America elect this man as their president?
What would you do if you were elected about Aleppo?
About
Aleppo.
And what is Aleppo?
You're kidding.
No.
Aleppo is in Syria.
Aleppo. What is Aleppo? It's a question every marijuana smoker asks himself at some point. MSNBC just gave Gary Johnson a do-over. Watch this.
I think I could stand up there for the whole debate and not say anything and emerge as a leader.
Wow. Our show continues with Rudy Giuliani. Stay tuned.
Oh, boy.
That was some funny news. We have to get to some hard news now, because what happened overnight is just disgusting. A massive manhunt underway for an armed killer who shot 5 people dead inside of a shopping mall just north of Seattle.
She just said there's people shooting. I heard a gunshot. I told her to just go to the bathroom and lock the door. Just lock the door and I'll be there as soon as I can. I don't know if they've even got to her yet. She's not answering her phone. I don't know if it went dead or I don't know.
Oh, unbelievable. All of the victims shot inside of a Macy's department store. Among the dead, 4 women and 1 man.
Just heartbreaking. Right now, police are scouring the area for this man seen on surveillance video carrying a hunting rifle. Police describe him as a Hispanic male in his 20s, wearing all black.
At this time, we are urging people to stay inside of their homes. If they see anything suspicious, then we urge them to call 911.
The gunman considered to be armed and dangerous, obviously. At this hour, his motive is still unknown. Well, joining us now is former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. We kind of want to run by the day's events with you. Great to see you, Mr. Mayor.
Good to see you.
So, first up, Hillary Clinton has postponed or canceled her trip to Charlotte. It's one of where the riots are taking place. It's one of a bunch of different events that she's canceled recently. But if she had gone to Charlotte, what could she have said?
Well, first of all, I think it was wise for her to do it. I mean, and also wise for Donald Trump not to go. They're having enough problems dealing with it. And we certainly don't want to politicize it. I think both of them should say the same thing, which is stop. I mean, stop the looting, stop the destruction of property. You're only destroying the property in large part of people in your own community. Well, what did they have to do with this shooting, which from the police department account seems to be justified, from the family's account isn't. In any event, a man who owns a candy store has nothing to do with this. What are you destroying his candy store for?
Right.
And I think that's the kind of thing we should be saying rather than looking for justifications for this. This isn't a protest.
Right.
I'm watching a riot. I had very strict rules that I learned really from a report written about the 2 riots in New York before I became mayor, called the Girgenti Report. It was written for the former Governor Cuomo. And basically the major theory of patrolling a riot is you don't let them take your streets.
Yeah.
The streets belong to the people of the city. To the soccer moms who want to get their kids to the soccer game on time, to the ambulance that has to get to the hospital in 3 minutes or 4, or the person is dead of a heart attack, or to the police vehicle that has to get to the middle of a robbery before somebody's killed. You take the streets like the ones you see in back of us, and you crowd them with people, you're making that city dangerous, unless you get a permit, and we know about it, and therefore we can plan around it.
Right.
So my rule was, first guy that went on the street, you got arrested, handcuffed, and taken away. Second guy that went on the street, handcuffed. By the 5th or 6th guy, they kind of got the message. And I also am not of the theory that police officers shouldn't be properly armed and have somewhat of a military look in a situation like that, because rather than creating a riot, it scares the hell out of people.
Yeah,
and it tells them, and I did it for 8 years. And I told you, I took over a city that had 2 major riots, including a pogrom where people just went out and killed people because they were Jewish. And I had no riots. I didn't have anything close to a riot. And they knew they couldn't test me.
Because you wouldn't put up with it.
They knew I had them outnumbered, and they couldn't test me. That didn't mean they couldn't protest. Boy, I got protested. I was called everything you could imagine. They used to protest in front of my house, in front of City Hall, on the streets. They used to march up and down the streets. But you could not go in the streets. Sidewalk, protest, streets belong to all of us.
We're in the middle of some crazy times. Spate of terror attacks again over the past few weeks. And this is going to be one of the big focuses on Monday night. Looking at Donald Trump's temperament, the response to the terror attacks, the discussion about foreign policy. What have you been telling Donald Trump? What do we expect to see from him?
Well, there's no doubt that on that issue he wins overwhelmingly. I mean, she's basically the architect of the problem we have today. She and Barack Obama, there would not be an ISIS but for the fact that we pulled out of Iraq after we essentially, snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. General Petraeus had been successful in the surge, particularly in that eastern part of Iraq where ISIS emerged. And foolishly, very foolishly and recklessly, Obama and Clinton withdrew all our troops. Where did they think these Sunni fighters were going to go? They weren't going to go to Maliki because Maliki was killing them.
Of course.
But we did nothing to stop Maliki from killing them, so many of them went over to ISIS.
Exactly.
And we weren't getting intelligence because we had no troops there. And then the president made probably one of the dumbest comments an American president ever made when he called them the JV, which indicated what poor intelligence he had about the development of ISIS. So When Donald Trump says she's the founder of ISIS and then goes on to say she's going to get the MVP award, that's of course sarcastic. But what it points out is that her policies and his policies made ISIS possible. And then his indecision with regard to Syria, drawing the red lines 12 times and backing off. Look, I know Islamic extremist terrorism really well since 1975. The weaker you are, the more they take advantage of you. And that's why we've had so many bombings in the last year, because we are displaying to the world, both Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, we won't say radical Islamic terrorism. During the Mount Lauer interview, she announced to the world she'll never use ground troops. I have no idea why we have an army if we're not going to use it. You display that kind of weakness, and they push you as far as they can push you. On the other hand, Donald Trump says, I'm going to build up our military to, I think it's 450 to 470,000 troops. We're going to have a Navy of 350 ships, which will allow us to patrol 2 oceans and possibly stop China in the South China Sea. We're going to go up to 35 battalions of Marines. We're going to increase significantly the number of aircraft that we have and modernize both our nuclear and other capacity. We're going to face the world once again, as Ronald Reagan did, with a military that's so strong that hopefully it'll keep the peace. And if needed, will be used. And used prudently, carefully, and when necessary to prevent things like Orlando from happening. And after September 11, when Bush went on offense, from then until the Fort Hood attack under Obama, there was no successful radical Islamic attack in this country. And that's because we had him on the run. It is very hard to plan an attack on your computer when an AK-47 is shooting at you and you're hiding in a cave.
Right. So what Donald Trump says on Monday night is just as important as how he says it. There are a lot of people wondering, what is his temperament going to be like? Is he going to be presidential? People on the fence wondering, is he someone I could vote for? What do you expect? Well,
yes, he's going to be the way I don't know if people saw the interview with Matt Lauer or the forum, which was sort of a mini debate, although they weren't on the stage at the same time. That's the temperament you're going to see. Donald Trump is not going to reinvent himself. He isn't. Hillary Clinton is going through this like Hillary Clinton doesn't know who she is. I mean, she's got to stand there and they're going to go through this. They're doing psychological profiling and they're doing... Donald Trump is going to come out there. He can be Donald Trump. And if you believe in what he believes in, vote for him. And if you don't. And boy, is that refreshing. When I tried, I don't know how many cases, 50, 60, 70, 80 in front of juries, I didn't reinvent myself for the cases that I tried. That was me.
But they're going to try and needle him. They've said this, that they're going to try and push Trump until he snaps at her, and they think that that will be unappealing to viewers. Is he prepared for that? Do you think it would be unappealing for viewers?
Well, my goodness, if you keep telling them all the time, as they have in the newspapers, which I think is the foolish thing, most foolish I've ever heard, that I'm going to hit you with my left hook constantly. Gee, I'm going to be prepared for your left hook.
Yeah.
You know.
But what
if yes, of course he's prepared for that.
What if that's a feint, though? What if that's a feint, Mr. Mayor, where she might actually,
nice?
She comes out and she's totally nice. She says, you know, Donald Trump has really rallied a portion of this country that is upset, and I think he's done a good job. Would that that might knock him down? He might fall over like a tree.
Well, I don't know if he would. I would. It would throw me off completely if Hillary Clinton pulls off an hour and a half of not attacking him.
Right.
That's our only campaign so far. Well, we'll have a whole new campaign. So far, he has laid out, he's given 12 policy speeches, which, by the way, was part of the preparation for the debate. The whole idea in August and September was speak about Islamic radical terrorism. He gave a major speech on that. Speak about the economy. Speak about taxes. Talk about what you're going to do about the schools. Gave a big speech on education, choice, charter schools. He's laid out his agenda. Actually, this week, next week, he's going to do his speech on crime. It's about the last one he really has to do. And he has personally laid out his agenda over the last month and a half. And in a way, that was the best preparation for the debate. It's all out there. Everybody knows what he stands for, and he's more than happy to tell you, here's the difference between him and Hillary on schools. He's in favor of choice. He's in favor of charter schools. He's in favor of doing away with tenure, and he's in favor of pay for performance. She's in favor of the public school systems, the rotting public school systems that presently exist, and doesn't have the ability to be in favor of what I just said because she is bought and paid for by the teachers union.
Literally.
All right, we have a lot more we want to get with you. Ted Cruz, emails, so you're going to stick around with us. Sure. He's going to stick with us on the couch, but we'll get his reaction to the FBI's latest Friday night document dump. This one may have caught President Obama in a lie.
And were you thinking about voting for Donald Trump? Before you do, Barbara Streisand would like a word with you. Just give her your cell. This morning, she's a one-woman mission to stop Trump. We'll tell you how that's working out for her.
And the legendary game show host Chuck Woolery has a message for all of his Hollywood friends. He's going to join us straight ahead.
Mr. President, when did you first learn that Hillary Clinton used an email system outside the U.S. government for official business while she was Secretary of State?
The same time everybody else learned it through news reports.
Oh, well, now we know something a little differently. Last night there was another document dumped by the FBI, and we are learning that, and we want to bring in the former mayor of New York City to dive into this again, Mr. Rudy Giuliani. This new back and forth between the president and Hillary Clinton, we're learning now that he used a pseudonym to communicate, and that some of these emails went to her private server. We don't know yet whether or not this is a lie, whether or not he knew about it and used a pseudonym in order to cover this up. What do you make of this?
Well, we'd have to see what it says. I mean, maybe he was doing it over her yoga and asking her questions about yoga. We don't know. Or it may involve government business, in which case he'd be in serious trouble. And also, do you realize how often President Obama learns things from the newspapers?
Right. You hear that a lot.
Does he have a staff? Does they ever tell him anything? I mean, the reality is I've heard him make that comment almost as often as no boots on the ground. I mean, no boots on the ground, and I learned about it from the newspapers. The thing about yesterday's revelation that really shocked me is basically it looks like the FBI was conducting this investigation for the purpose of giving immunity.
Well, exactly, because it's one thing to learn that the president and Hillary are corrupt, fine, but to think the Justice Department is corrupt, that is a big deal.
Well, they conveniently leave out the FBI cannot grant immunity. They have to get approval from the Justice Department.
Of course.
So the Justice Department, run by Loretta Lynch, who was sitting on the airplane with Bill Clinton, is the one that had ultimately approved those 5 immunities.
One of which sat next to Hillary Clinton during her
the whole idea of an
meetings.
investigation is to investigate to see if a crime was committed, and if it was, then you might give one person immunity, the other people you haven't pleaded guilty, and then you prosecute the case against the main culprit. In this case, the principal would be Mrs. Clinton. And I mean, I found the first Comey report impossible to understand. I mean, he laid out a perfect case of intent. Mm-hmm. First of all, a clear case of negligent use of material, which is
enough,
flat-out violation, felony. But here's how we prove intent: false statements, destruction of evidence.
Right.
Hard drive smashed, cell phone smashed. We look at your actions. This is a charge every judge gives a jury in a criminal trial. He will tell a jury the way the government proves intent. They have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the person intended to commit a crime, and the best way to determine intent is to look at the person's actions. A false exculpatory statement is evidence of guilt. Destruction of evidence is evidence of guilt. I mean, that's just common sense.
Yeah.
Right?
And both of those are
happened in
very
mass.
clear.
Both of those didn't just happen. They happened in mass.
So how can Comey run the FBI? How can he continue to keep that job?
I don't understand how he couldn't, after reading his report and now watching these Friday afternoon kind of political hack putting out of information. I mean, that's what political hacks do.
Yeah.
It's disgraceful.
Yeah.
And to give immunity to so many people, some of whom look like people that didn't have top security clearance or security and had top security information in their possession. I don't know if the Justice Department can ever prosecute anyone for violating this statute. The violations here were so many, so often, so gross. I don't know if we'll ever get a case like this. And one of the things he said during his news conference to justify himself was, well, we've never had a case like this. Well, he's right. We never had a case of this kind of massive exposure of top secret and confidential information to our enemies during a period of time in which we know that they're hacking left and right. I mean, they just hacked 500 million identities from Yahoo.
Yeah, still a lot of serious questions. Before we let you go quickly, though, Ted Cruz endorsing Donald Trump yesterday. Big news of the day. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I'm happy as a Republican that the party is together, or at least as together as you're going to get it. I look at the polls, and, at one point Donald Trump was down to 73% of the Republican vote. He's up now pushing almost what Romney had. He's about 90, 88, 90. Romney was at 93. He gets to 93. With his ability to appeal to independent voters, which Romney didn't have, and even to some Democrats, I think we got a good chance of winning this election.
That's what he needs. All right, Mayor, always good to have you on the couch with us this morning.
Mr. Mayor, great to see you.
Good to see you. All right, what happens when you ask the American people who has the best stamina to be president of the United States? Well, the answer and what that might mean heading into Monday night's debate next.
Then will Americans elect this man as their next president?
What would you do if you were elected about Aleppo? About Aleppo. And what is Aleppo?
MSNBC just gave Gary Johnson a do-over. You can guess how that went. We're now just 45 days away from the presidential election. Holy smokes. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will meet separately with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton tomorrow. The meetings will take place in New York City, where the Prime Minister has been staying for the UN General Assembly. And we've all seen the video, Hillary Clinton tumbling down after leaving that 9/11 memorial. Now we know what kind of damage episodes like that are doing to her campaign. A brand new McClatchy-Maris poll shows likely voters think Donald Trump has more stamina to be president, 53 to 39%. Abby?
Wow, thank you, Clayton. All right, stamina, not the only poll that shows Hillary falling behind. Now Clinton is asking, why isn't she running away with the race already?
Why aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask? Well, the choice for working families has never been clearer. I need your help to get Donald Trump's record out to everybody.
And why are you screaming? Well, the latest Real Clear Politics average shows Clinton's overall lead is shrinking faster than anyone expected. So why isn't she winning by more? And will the debates on the one on Monday night change anything? Here to break it down is Tom Bevan from Real Clear Politics and Clifford Young, president of Ipsos Public Affairs. Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. It's great being here.
Good to see you. All right, let's start with this poll that's out, Wall Street Journal, NBC poll, asking people about their top concerns. When it comes to Trump, it says 33% concerned about temperament, 27% offensive comments, 13% praise for Putin, 6% not releasing taxes. You look at Clinton concerns, we can pull those up now. 36% dealing with Syria, Iraq, and Libya, 29% email scandal, 9% offensive comments about Trump supporters, and 8% health issues. Tom, I'll start with you. Basically, answer that question when she says, why am I not 50 points up right now? Why not?
Well, I think most Democrats are asking that question too. I mean, she's got the money advantage, she's got an organizational advantage. She's clearly the more experienced candidate, but she's not exciting voters, particularly millennial voters. In these battleground states, she's losing independents by anywhere from 15 to 20 points. So there are a lot of factors at play, but certainly this race is much closer than Democrats thought it would be at this point. And part of that is because all of them view Donald Trump as completely unacceptable, and that view is shared by some in the public, but certainly not all, and therefore we have a pretty close race with 6 weeks left.
Right, Clifford, we just showed you some of the concerns that voters have with both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. First debate is on Monday night. How much can change after even the first debate?
Yeah, a great question, very important. Stepping back a bit to kind of explain from a 30,000-foot view why Donald Trump has narrowed the gap. Over the last 3 weeks, he's really been on message. He's been efficient. His trip to Mexico and his speech in Arizona really energized the base. So he's going into the debates with momentum, with an energized debate. And ultimately, the question is, do debates have an impact? And what I would say is, historically, for the most part, no. They really just reinforce existing views. This debate will be key. This debate, in my mind, will be very, very similar or as important as the 1980 debate between Reagan and Carter or the 1960 debate between Kennedy and Nixon. And what has to happen? Donald Trump needs to show himself to be presidential, on message, and efficient. And in contrast, Hillary should show herself to be on message and specifically talking about those sort of key issues that people are worried about: her health, her stamina, her ability to see the effort through.
Yeah, Tom, this race really at this point is neck and neck. You look at some of the swing state polls. This race could very well come down to independent voters who haven't decided who they're voting for. What needs to happen on Monday night? What advice would you be giving Donald Trump if he wants to win the White House?
Well, I think Cliff's right. I mean, look, Donald Trump has to clear this bar, right, of being seen as presidential. He hasn't really moved the needle on that question so far over the course of the campaign. But, with 100 million people tuning in, even if you think the universe of persuadables out there isn't very big, that still will be a sizable number of folks who are watching this debate. They're maybe looking at both candidates thinking, I'm not really, I don't want to vote for Hillary. I don't really want to vote for Donald Trump. If he can clear that bar by keeping his composure and being on message, then I think there's a great opportunity for him. Conversely, I think Hillary, she's not going to be able to wash away her biggest vulnerability, which is this trust issue. So she has to exploit her strengths, which is competence and experience and judgment. And so they're both going to be fighting over the same turf, and it's going to be interesting to watch.
Right. Tom, what does history tell us about the importance of these debates? When you look at past presidential candidates, where they stand against each other going into the debates, and then after the debates, what can we learn from that?
Well, debates can move the needle. I mean, we saw that with Romney last time around. Reagan had a bad debate, his first debate, but managed to recover. I mean, Donald Trump has to, I think, not just perform well on Monday night. I think that's the first thing. It's critical. But he has to continue to perform in the next two debates so as not to have this, if he does have a good debate, to have something just be a short-term fix or some sort of bump that ends up dissipating over time. So certainly debates can make a difference, but he has to perform over the course of all three debates. Not just on Monday night.
It'll be fascinating. Well, I'll be watching. Tom Clifford, thanks for being with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
And coming up, Mexico in panic mode after realizing they might actually have to pay for that big, beautiful wall. Plus, from Barbra Streisand to Don Cheadle, some of Hollywood's biggest stars are ganging up to stop Donald Trump.
But you only get this many famous people together if the issue is one that truly matters to all of us.
A disease or
ecological crisis or
a racist, abusive coward.
Wow. Legendary game show host Chuck Woolery joins us live with a message for them and their Hollywood friends. And he's here now. Good to see you, sir.
Hi, how are you? But you only get this many famous people together if the issue is one that truly matters to all of us.
A disease or
ecological crisis or
a racist, abusive coward who could permanently damage the fabric of our society.
Do the math. Do we really want to give nuclear weapons to a man whose signature move is firing?
Firing things?
But we can end this nightmare before it begins.
We can save the day.
Joining us now is Chuck Woolery, a man who spent many years in Hollywood. Chuck, I look at this, and the first thing I think is I can't wait to vote Big Orange in November. I'm serious. This has got to put people off. This has got to have a counterproductive effect.
Well, I'm not sure it has a counterproductive effect. However, when the cultural Marxists of Hollywood get together in their sheep pen, I mean, it's true. It's like they all follow each other because they're afraid not to do anything else. I guarantee you, I don't know a lot of these people. In fact, I'm not sure I know any of them. However, I know the culture. I lived there 45 years. I know what it's like. You do it for one reason. One is you want to work. The other is, it's not important to know anything as long as someone has a teleprompter in front of you to give you the lines to say.
Which is what that looks like when you watch this commercial. You know, Tucker said something interesting last week, and he said, you asked the question, I wonder how many people are voting for Donald Trump just because if they're on, you know, trying to make that decision because they're trying to go against the media, against the Washington elite, against the Hollywood elite. And you look at this commercial, how many folks are going to say, well, this is exactly why I'm going to prove a point to vote Donald Trump?
Yeah, there's got to be kind of a backlash against this, and it's really, I think, probably what Trump's candidacy is all about, and we all know that. But it's a massive backlash against this PC, which, you know, no one knows where this stuff came from. It just kind of, PC just kind of appeared. Well, it didn't. It was the Frankfurt School. That's where it appeared, and the Frankfurt School, it's a real interesting little piece. Frankfurt School was in Germany, obviously, brought on PC. Marx picked it up, thought it was a great idea for his government. By the Second World War, Hitler was such an anti-communist that the Franklin School had to move, so the Frankfurt School, so they moved here to the Columbia University campus. You will find the Frankfurt School on Columbia's property. That's where political correctness came from. I like the history of all of this stuff so that I understand what's happening today. I want to know who my enemy is. Our enemy is cultural Marxism, and that's with Hollywood, with everything.
Speaking of history, there's some water under the bridge with Senator Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. I was
a Cruzy.
You were a Cruzy. Yeah. You're a Texas guy.
I am.
The news this week that Ted Cruz is throwing his support behind Donald Trump, did you fall off your chair?
No, it's about time, really. I was very disappointed in, I don't know Ted Cruz. I've never met him. But he's a very principled conservative, which I find, you know, assuring to me. But I was very disappointed in how he handled the convention and his speech there, even though I know he said vote your conscience and everything else. It's not that I wanted him to get on board and become a pom-pom girl. It wasn't that. It's just that it was over. acknowledge the fact that it's over and move on.
Is there anything that concerns you with Donald Trump as someone that is supporting him? You know, a lot of people say that some things he says can come across as disrespectful. What
He's a populist. I fear one part, which is a kind of a Hoover element, which is the tariffs. You know, Hoover was the last businessman we had as a president, and Donald Trump will be the next if he's our president. And the idea of tariffs frightens me, because I think that kind of helped lead into the Great Depression that we were in, and just the opposite with Coolidge. I'm a historian. I like to go back in history and find out who did it right and who did it wrong, and then say, well, why don't we do it right again, or why are we doing it wrong?
But so Trump is, of course, a populist, and populism does raise certain concerns. The people who've arrayed against him, though, are the opposite of populists. They're elitists.
Right.
So if you were to divide, you know, look at which is a bigger threat to the way we live, populism or elitism?
I go with Trump on this one. I have to go with Trump. I will vote for Donald Trump. I will support Donald Trump. And I will pray that Mike Pence will have a great impression on Donald Trump and make him more conservative. And the problem is, we get back to this with a history of all of this. People don't even understand what the word conservative means anymore. They don't understand what the word progressive means. They don't understand what liberal means. They just say, oh, you look like and you act like and you talk like, you must be a liberal.
Exactly. You know where they can find out? Blunt Force Truth. A podcast that Clayton has endorsed. Clayton's a big podcast guy. He says it's awesome.
I love it. And last time we talked about it on the show, it skyrocketed to #1. It's a fantastic podcast. Chuck hosts it. You've got to go and listen to it. Download it on iTunes right now. Blunt Force Truth. Tell us quickly what's it about.
It's about deconstructing the news and looking at the history of our politics and how it's affected our country. And we have a lot of guests on who are pretty interesting. It's fun to do.
Awesome. Thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
All right, we do want to turn to some other headlines this morning. Chilling new details from the investigation into the suspected New York bomber Ahmaud Rahami. Sources saying that he rode the train carrying those pipe and pressure cooker bombs into Manhattan on the night of the blast. The first bomb injuring dozens of people. The second never went off. Rahami remains in stable condition after being hunted down and shot by police. It has been a huge campaign promise from the beginning. Donald Trump forcing Mexico to pay for the border wall.
Don't worry, folks. We're going to be building the wall. We're going to build the wall. And who is going to pay for the wall? Who?
I am not going to pay for this wall.
And it turns out they just might. A former Mexico diplomat says Trump could get that money by increasing visa fees and by raising tolls on bridges. And I think we're going next to Gary Johnson, because you thought that this was bad. Watch this.
What would you do if you were elected about Aleppo? About Aleppo. And what is Aleppo? You're kidding. No. Aleppo is in Syria.
Oh boy, well, for some reason MSNBC decided to give a libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson another shot in an interview on Thursday night.
People would recognize that there's another choice, and that there would be an examination of me and Bill Weld as who we are and what we've done, and not based on that. I think I could stand up there for the whole debate and not say anything and emerge as a leader.
I can't get enough.
So Gary Johnson is TV gold. He is officially invited on this show every single day that I'm here anyway. We can do a Gary Johnson.
Do you remember the last time we had him on? Do you remember last time we had him on?
The satellite blew up.
Yeah, literally. The satellite couldn't handle it, and we wanted him back. The satellite like exploded.
Come back.
Please come back. You're invited anytime.
Anytime you want.
Totally sincere, by the way. Please do.
Oh, all right.
Well, next up, new leaked emails show what the press really thinks about Donald Trump. It's fascinating, actually. NBC's Andrea Mitchell, she's a straight journalist, called his nomination, we're quoting now, awful. The Clinton camp says the press is going too easy on Trump. Huh? Rick Sanchez says, oh, that's not right. He joins us next.
Plus, Whoopi Goldberg just fired herself from The View.
What?
So what do the media really we think about the candidates in the presidential race, specifically about Donald Trump? Well, now we know. In newly released leaked emails, we find NBC's Andrea Mitchell, she's chief foreign affairs correspondent for the channel. She wrote this to former Secretary of State Colin Powell back in June. She said, quote, Armitage now supporting her, Hillary, that'd be Dick Armitage, Powell's former deputy. Are you going to endorse her too? I'm wondering. She continues, I know Trump controls the convention rules committee, but I keep thinking they have to find a way not to nominate him. Powell responds this way, I don't see how. Even Paul Ryan in today's paper says he has problems, but is sticking with Trump. Trump is his own best critic right now. Be careful not to give him critics he can attack and divert attention. I assume he will get the nomination. Then the game is on. To which Andrea Mitchell responds, it is awful. It is awful. Wow. Pulling back the mask, that's what she really thinks. Well, this is Hillary Clinton's team is blaming her struggling poll numbers on the press. They're whining that the media are going too easy on Donald Trump, if you can even imagine. Joining us now to discuss, our old friend, radio talk show host and Fox News Latino.com contributor, Rick Sanchez. Rick, it's great to see you. So Andrea Mitchell, who is kind of the living embodiment of the old media, a straight news reporter, she calls it as she sees it, is calling Donald Trump and his nomination awful? How can she cover this race?
She's not the living embodiment of what news media is supposed to be traditionally in this country. Andrea Mitchell is one of the insiders, and she views Donald Trump as an interloper. How dare someone like this become a part of our political system, as if she has the right to determine who gets to be in that political system. That's the ongoing problem that I've long written about and long noticed inside our media atmosphere and ambiance in this country, which is too many people in that little inside bubble seem to think that they have the right to determine from their little balconies, I guess in New York City or something, what the rest of us in the nation are actually looking for in a candidate. That's the real problem with that. That she's making a determination based on how she and the rest of the so-called insiders in the media feel about our politics, and that's not her place. Her place is to find out what people are saying and report back to us.
So you're saying Andrea Mitchell, who's been in this business for 40 years, married to the former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan, is part of the establishment. I think that's fair. But why is the establishment so threatened by Trump? And the press especially, you think that the press's job is to take the side of the powerless against the powerful, ask tough questions of those who are running things on behalf of the rest of us. They seem to be doing the opposite.
The press should be threatened by Trump. The press should also be threatened by Hillary Clinton. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to look for all the things in both of those candidates that could possibly create problems for the citizenry of the United States. That's what journalism, as you well know, is all about. The problem is, for the most part, we haven't heard the stories about what the Clintons have done in Colombia, what they got away with in Haiti, what they got away with in many poor African nations where the people of those countries suffered as a result of the wonderful multi-million-dollar deals that the Clintons pulled off in a pay-for-play scheme that has gone generally unreported.
That's right.
These are the kinds of things that nobody seems to point out when they say, well, they're giving Donald Trump a break. I frankly think that too often today our media gives them both a break, Tuck.
I think there's something to that. Rick Sanchez joining us live this morning. It's great to see you, Rick.
It's always great to see you, Tuck. God bless, buddy.
Thank you. Well, if you thought this was good, we've got a huge final hour to come. Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, close advisor to the Trump campaign, and our own Geraldo Rivera join us live. Plus, we're 2 days away, of course, from the first presidential debate. That's on Monday. What can Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump learn from the past? We'll take a trip down debate memory lane. Yes, there is such a thing, and we have the keys to it. Stay tuned.
Well, there are just 2 days until Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump face off for the very first time at Hofstra University in that debate. So what can we learn from past memorable debate moments? Here to walk down memory lane is former Special Assistant to President George W. Bush and the former Ohio State Director for the Romney presidential campaign, Scott Jennings. Scott has also been involved in debate prep for Senate congressional and gubernatorial candidates, so he knows a thing or two about the behind the scenes. Nice to see you again, Scott. Welcome back.
Yeah, good morning.
All right, let's go down memory lane and take a look at 1984 and this one-liner from Ronald Reagan, which really shifted everything. Watch this.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
There's also a failure of the moderator to not do any kind of a follow-up there. Maybe he was sort of like taken aback by it and said, I don't have anything to follow up with that home run you just hit.
Yeah, this was the brilliance of Ronald Reagan. He was able to take, and what was not a great debate, this was actually in Louisville, Kentucky, and he did not have a great night. And in fact, afterwards, he came out for a rally and mispronounced Mitch McConnell's name in his first election. And so it was sort of a bad night for everybody. But what do we remember? One line. And so in terms of prep, having a line may be all that ever comes out. So he was gifted as a performer, but candidates should think about those kinds of lines because it may be all you get.
Sometimes they can come off great. Sometimes they can seem rehearsed, like we saw through the GOP primaries. It seemed like they were forced, like, all right, somebody fed them that line. Let's take a look at Michael Dukakis' response to the death penalty question in 1988. This is an ouch moment. Watch.
Governor, if Kitty Dukakis were raped and murdered, would you favor an irrevocable death penalty for the killer?
No, I don't, Bernard.
So we asked about his wife. Would you favor the death penalty? What about that moment?
Yeah, here's the thing about that question. It sounds like a policy question, but it's not. His campaign manager, Dukakis' campaign manager, later said this wasn't about policy. It was testing his emotional demeanor and connectivity with average people. He answered it like a cold set of talking points, and that's not a question you want to answer that way. So candidates, when they get these questions, there's a policy element, but you have to remember, folks aren't necessarily just judging you on policy. Do they have anything in common with you? And if you're a husband, that's not really something you'd have much in common with if you answered it like Dukakis.
1992, part of the narrative for George H.W. Bush that he seemed disconnected from the country at that moment, and that Bill Clinton was sort of embracing the public. And then George H.W. Bush ended up doing this during the debate. Remember, he just checks his watch as if he doesn't want to be there. That was a really bad moment for him.
Yeah, it really was. The watch checking was fed right into the Clinton narrative. You know, he was running as the emotional empathizer, and they wanted to show President Bush as aloof, not connected to people, didn't really want to be there, and they got their moment. It was an unspoken moment, but it's a good reminder for prep that words matter, but so does body language.
And words matter. Romney versus President Obama in 2012. Let's listen to him and the greatest geopolitical threat, he says, was Russia. Listen.
Months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not Al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because the Cold War has been over for 20 years.
What about that moment?
It was a little bit of a passive rebuttal from Governor Romney there. Obama got the best of him. It turns out that in retrospect, it wasn't true. Russia is our #1 threat, but at that time, Romney didn't press the point. And so never let someone get between you and your key point, whether it's a moderator or your opponent.
Great stuff. Always great to watch this. We'll be watching on Monday night. Scott, great to see you this morning. Thanks for your expertise on this. We've got a big final hour on tap. Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, Geraldo Rivera, both join us live when we come back.